The 1973 to 1975 Recession by Sarah and Alyssa.
When the economy is prospering, it is going through an expansion, but a recession or depression is the opposite. A business cycle is how the economy flows while also looking at the details about expansions and recessions. Economists believe business cycles shouldn't even occur. When the economy is at full employment, which is when all the resources are being used, it should be able to remain at this level.
However, people are not perfect, and everything does not always remain the same. So when the economic activity changes, that date becomes the date of the business cycle. In 1973, there was a peak in November that began the recession, and in March of 1975, there was a trough that ended the recession.
Around this time, the Vietnam War was over, and there were loads of soldiers being released looking for jobs. Because they were actively searching, they were unemployed, raising the rate. On August 15, 1971, President Nixon addressed this issue in his speech. He claimed the Job Development Act of 1971 was going to allow there to be more money invested in machinery. 10% would go to job creative development, later dropping to 5%. He was also going to try to repeal the 7% excise tax on cars. These investments and tax reductions were in hope of increasing consumer spending. Even though Eisenhower was planning and trying to avoid a recession, in January of 1974, the unemployment rate was about 5%, and in 1 year it shot up to about 9%. When looking at what most economists recorded to GDP during this time, the difference looks a lot worse than what it actually was. This is because they don't take Nixon's price controls into account. Nixon froze prices for 90 days after his speech. This is a problem because the recorded inflation is below what it actually was. This causes an overstatement of real GDP growth during the time of the price control. When the controls are removed, the recorded inflation rate is above what it actually was. This understates the growth. That's why economist David Henderson believes it's better to leave out the years 1971 to 1975 when measuring real GDP to get a picture of what the growth actually looked like around that time. When these years are left out from 1950 to 1971, the real GDP growth rate is 2.28% and is about 2% from 1975 to 2007. This makes the recession at this time look a lot less than what most people know it as being, but this is because the recession's growth rate was overstated. Inflation and the unemployment rate go hand in hand. If the economy is settled at full employment, inflation will remain constant. However, this is unlikely. In January of 1973, the inflation rate was about 6%, and then spiked in 1974 to about 11%. By 1975, it dropped to about 9% and continued dropping till 1976. The way inflation works is it determines the amount money can buy. So when it is high, for example, $10 can buy less than what it could have before, and vice versa. When it is low, it can buy more.